The Monday, November 25th, 2024 meeting of the Marquette City Commission is now called to order at 6 p.m. Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. City Clerk, may I have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Davis.
Here.
Commissioner Gottlieb.
Here.
Commissioner Larson.
Here.
Commissioner Mayer. Commissioner Ottaway.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Schlegel.
Here.
And Mayor Hanley.
Here. Commissioners, do I have a motion to, Commissioner Pro Tem Schlegel?
Thank you. I would make the motion to excuse Commissioner Mayer for personal reasons.
All right, in a second. Commissioner Larson?
Second.
All right, any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Yes.
All opposed? Motion passes 6-0. All right, next we have an agenda in front of us. Do we have a motion, Commissioners? Commissioner Davis?
I move we approve the agenda as presented.
All right, a second. Commissioner Ottaway?
Second.
Sorry, I'm getting there. Perfect. Any discussion? All right, hearing none, all in favor, please say yes.
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 All opposed? Motion passes 6-0. I have a couple announcements today. First off, City Hall will be closed Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of this week for the Thanksgiving holiday. So any issues that you have at that point, please remember that. And then the second announcement I have is that the City of Marquette Office of Arts and Culture and Innovate Marquette are inviting community members to a special discussion, Voices of Marquette, a community conversation on belonging. This forum will take place on Tuesday, December 3rd at 6:30 p.m. in the Peter White Public Library Community Room. The one-hour conversation is an opportunity for residents and visitors to share their stories, challenges, and ideas about what it means to belong in Marquette. Whether you'd like to participate or simply listen, this welcoming environment is designed to foster respect, understanding, and connection for all attendees. It's a free event, and you're encouraged to bring your neighbors and friends. No RSVP is required. After that, it brings us to our first public comment session of our section of the meeting. Public comments may not exceed 3 minutes per person. Please state your name and physical address when addressing the commission. Do we have anyone for public comment?
Margaret Brum, 404 East Magnetic Street. I'm here tonight to talk about cigarette butt recycling and update the commission on certain things that are happening and are not happening. Number one, for those of you not familiar, the City of Marquette, in connection with the Lake Superior Watershed Partnership, has been running the only cigarette butt recycling program that I'm aware of, not just in the Upper Peninsula, but in the state of Michigan. Program involves different catch basins all over town where a volunteer, me, goes around, collects the cigarette butts, dries them out, and puts them in a Amazon box wrapped in a garbage bag and get a free label from the Lake Superior Watershed Partnership because they get the credit for it with TerraCycle, and takes them to UPS. It doesn't cost the city a dime. It doesn't cost Lake Superior Watershed Partnership a dime. And we have literally shipped hundreds of thousands of cigarette butts out of the city so they don't end up in the lake. What we have around town is various collection parts, and I'm asking the city to do one more thing. They were nice enough to install these tubes at 4 different locations, but I went to pick up cigarette butts over the weekend before the storm hit, and I reached inside, and instead of cigarette butts, it was mush because the cover isn't protected from the rain. So I'm asking if a hinged little piece of plastic could be put there just so it could be lifted up, the cigarette butt put in, and then shut down. Because those are used. I mean, they were full. It was just, I couldn't save it. Because when I reached up, it just collapsed in my hand. Usually if it holds its structure, I put it in the bathtub and I turn the heat on anyway, it can work, but I couldn't say that. And I hate throwing them in the trash. It's better to throw them in the trash than it is to throw them in the lake, but still, just one little piece of plastic. There's only 4, and I can email you, city manager, where the locations are. Secondly, we had an unfortunate incident this weekend. Our best collection point is at the Board of Light and Power. There's 2 trash cans that are full of sand, and we encourage people to pull in there and dump full ashtrays there. And I am proud to say that since we started up, it is the best collection point we have. They're not wet, and they're huge amounts of cigarette butts that good people are dumping there. One whole can was full, and I had my gloves on, and I did all that, and it was fine, and I reached for the second can and opened it up, and there was a huge lithium battery in the second can. Now, this was the size of a remote control, and it scared me. For a lot of reasons, you have to have special shipping and handling of lithium batteries. They're prone to fires and explosion. And for whoever who did it, many people, when they dump their cigarette butts in those cans, they're not put out yet. I mean, they're straight from an ashtray. So somebody could throw a cigarette butt on top of that, and we could have a terrible explosion there. So I'm asking the city to figure out where I should send people with these lithium batteries. I don't know where to do it. So if you could figure that out so I could share it to people, I'd appreciate it. And to whoever's doing this, don't do it again. If I find it again, I'm going to have to work with the city and find a location for these garbage cans that is under video surveillance. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Do we have anyone else for public comment today?
Good evening. My name's Alex Conklin. I live at 410 East Ridge Street, apartment 2E. The key thing there is apartment 2E. So there's 10 units in that building right now, 10 apartments, and we're all pretty tight-knit little community there. So for about the last year or so, our building's been for sale. The search has been on to find a new landlord. We've all been made aware recently that our building's sold and it's gonna no longer be apartments. So we're all having to find new housing. It's now being converted back to a single family home. So for about the past 6 to 8 months or so, we've been trying to band together as a group and thinking like, you know, maybe we can save this. Maybe we can all keep this part of the community there through a cooperative. The city does have a restriction in a code against cooperative housing that we found to be a barrier. So I just wanted to come make you all aware. Maybe this can start a conversation on maintaining housing for folks in the community, affordable housing. This, you know, all of us as residents, we are all finding it really difficult to find affordable housing to buy, let alone rentals. This was something that would have been a really awesome thing for all of us, and we were hoping to become a model for maybe future projects in the city. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen. Maybe our experience will help others learn from that. But yeah, and I mean, through all this too, we're, you know, like I said, we're all looking for new places to live now. And seeing that there is a code restricting co-ops, maybe we could even discuss a code to prevent multifamily houses from becoming owned by a single person that's looking to convert those. I don't know. These are just kind of things that we've all been tossing around lately and just trying to cope with our situation and move ahead from it. I'm hoping maybe this will turn into something better for folks in the future, but I just wanted to make you all aware of what's going on. And if anybody would like to have a conversation with us over at 410 East Ridge, we'd love to talk to you. Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment? All right. Seeing none, public comment is now closed, which brings us to presentations. We do have 3 presentations tonight, the first of which is a presentation for life-saving efforts by Detective Captain Chris Aldrich.
Good evening, everyone. If I could ask Pam Waters and Michael Watts to please join me up at the podium. Just like to share a little information on an incident that happened at the Barriga Gym a few weeks back, which involved these 2 fine citizens. On November 11th, 2024, a pickleball player suffered a medical emergency while playing and fell to the ground unresponsive. Pam Waters, a retired nurse, was notified by other players and quickly ran to the victim. She assessed the situation and knew immediately that he needed CPR, which she initiated. It It was obvious to those around her that she was in control and worked with the confidence of someone who had tremendous life-saving experience in her background. A short time after Pam began CPR, Michael Watts assisted her by giving breaths while she performed chest compressions. They performed CPR on the victim until other first responders arrived on scene and utilized an AED that was recently installed in the gym. I'm happy to report that the victim survived the medical emergency. There is no doubt the outcome would have been different without the quick action and life-saving measures taken by Pam Waters and Michael Watts. They saved a life that day, and today we recognize them for that. Thank you. Sure.
I asked him, do we get to say anything? Because it's really important to me to just spend 30 seconds because this is really fantastic. And it's a little bit awkward for me being acknowledged and recognized for something I was trained, very well trained to do. But as I was thinking about it, especially in today's world, to acknowledge kindnesses should just be what things are, right? But in today's world, it's a big deal. But I want to say that it's still a little awkward because there were a lot of people there that day. There were folks who ran in from City Hall and the police department and the senior center. And our own pickleballers called for help and dialed 911 and manned the doors and directed the ambulance in and got the AED off the wall and felt the femoral pulse. There was a whole community of us. And so it is a deep honor to accept this recognition of gratitude by an extraordinarily kind community for a simple human kindness that should be every day. And I just want to say that kindness is truly the only thing that has ever changed the world in a positive way, and it costs us nothing. So just be kind to each other, to people you know, to people you don't know. Thank you so much.
Before you step away, commissioners, did we have any comments for this? Anyone?
Sure.
All right, Commissioner, or Pro Tem Schlegel?
Thank you. Very well put, Pam. Thank you so much for taking the time to bring up the importance of kindness. And my wife is a 30-year plus nurse. It's part of what's in your DNA from day one, I'm sure. So thank you for doing, thank you all for whatever role you played in saving that person's life. But one of the greatest things that she's ever mentioned to me is when it comes to helping your neighbors. And she always says, I'm a Youper taking care of my Youper neighbors, you know, and that's the beauty of what you're talking about. And I just, you made my year. So thank you for bringing it up and for bringing those words to us tonight.
Commissioner Davis?
I thought I had heard that the AED was just placed in the Barriga Gym recently. Yes. So
6 months ago.
Oh, okay, 6 months ago, but still, that's a pretty recent thing. You know, I often run into people that say that they should take lessons in CPR, and they should, and they should, and they should, and they never do. And this is a great example of it is so, the training is not hard. It's pretty easy. It's probably not easy when you're actually in motion doing it, but just having that training under your belt would be a great help to the whole community. And Pam, thank you for your wonderful words. And thank you for your life-saving.
Anyone else? Okay. I also would like to thank you for everything that you did. As a former first responder, I know how low the odds are that someone survives after they've been through are going unresponsive, especially with defibrillators. So the fact that you were able to bring this person back because of the actions you took immediately is amazing. And I really do want to commend you for that. I also know how hard CPR is, so very good job on that as well. The amount of work that you put in just doing that and continuing it until the responders got there and the EMTs, I'm sure was quite hard. And also emotionally. I'm assuming that this is a person that you are with regularly, and to watch a friend and still react is a big deal, which is, it's good that you can fall into it and continue. So thank you very much for everything that you did. All right, thank you. All right, up next on the agenda, we have a presentation from the Lake Superior Community Partnership by Chief Executive Officer Christopher Germain. Ooh, look how quick you were. Thank you, Christopher. Yeah.
So what?
Follow that one.
Yeah, I know, right? I was actually kind of hoping I would have some space. Well, hey, everyone. It's good to see you all again. It was almost exactly a year ago today, to the day, that I was here giving you my first update, actually, as CEO of the LSCP. So I'm happy to be back here giving you another one. And I tried to shave out all of the stuff that you already know and just talk about what's happened over the last year. So I'll start off with the big stuff, actually. When I stood here a year ago, I kind of gave you a sneak peek into our strategic plan. It was not officially adopted by the board yet. It wasn't public yet, but it now, of course, is. The LSCP for 26 years, the number one issue it really struggled with was its own identity. Was it an economic development organization? Was it a chamber? Was it a consulting firm? Like, what exactly was economic development? We sat through about a year-long strategic planning process and finally decided we're all three of those things. So we have this past year really doubled down on that idea that the LSCP is the boots on the ground team that works in economic development in a bunch of different ways and not just one particular way. So at the very top is the LSCP as an organization. We're a 501c6, so we're technically a business league. We have a 501c3 arm that also helps to amplify some of our services. But then our services fall within what we know as the Economic Alliance, which is your traditional economic development work. So housing, childcare, air service, energy, business regulation, business development, all that fun stuff. Then we have the Business Network, which is effectively a chamber and anything but name. Right? So the business network is e-blast, business after hours, networking, all that type of traditional stuff you would expect of a chamber, because we don't have a standalone chamber up here anywhere in the county anymore at this stage. So the LSCP has stepped in to really serve that role. And there's a lot of value to combining those two roles, but you have to be very intentional about the way you do it. And so that's why we've really been focusing on that. And then our third arm is professional services. It's really what stabilized the LSCP over the last 8 years or so, as membership declined significantly in the organization between 2008 and really about 2022. By the time we bottomed out, the professional services and contracts were all that were really holding the organization afloat. So the LSCP now, I'm happy to report, in the last 2 years, since I've been CEO, has grown 25%. We've added over 80 different businesses and organizations and individuals to the LSCP, and I think a lot of it has to do with the work in that structure and this team right here. This is the world's most professional photo of my team. They're awesome though, right? And one of the first things I did was allow jeans in the office, which is apparently very controversial. But we're gonna do it. But we now have a team of 12 full-time folks and one part-time individual who does everything from community development to traditional business development to marketing to fundraising. So my job as CEO and really everything in between. That includes a new AmeriCorps position that we have at the LSCP for the first time ever, who focuses specifically on community development programming and grant support, which is something that we've heard desperately is needed, especially with our local government partners, but also with our nonprofit partners. So this past year, we also lost a couple of good ones in terms of retirements. Lois Ellis, who many of you may know, was on our team at the LSCP, but provided economic development services to Dickinson County and their economic alliance. So she retired and moved downstate, actually to another state that we won't name. And then Sue Hellisty, our longtime controller who left, retired, came back for another couple of years and then left again, has fully officially retired, she tells me. And then Rebecca Dales, who really got Childcare Spark off the ground and running, also ran out her contract this year. So we've seen some change with staff, but these are our 5 external focus areas. Again, you got a little bit of a sneak peek of this last time, but I always like to point out those first 2 in particular. So economic development organizations, I think when we say it, sometimes people just garner this idea in their head that we go to big conferences and fly grand places and try to bring 1,000 jobs back at a time. That's not really what we do with the LSCP. We have partners that work on business attraction work. If somebody comes to us and says they want to locate in Marquette County, of course, we're going to help them do that. But we don't spend significant resources going out and trying to find those things. We will focus on those retaining and growing those existing businesses who are already here in Marquette County. We've seen some really great growth, businesses that have started in Marquette that have expanded to the West End, and we've seen some vice versa happening in the last couple of years as well. So we're really excited to see that. But ultimately, almost all of our business development resources are dedicated to people who are already here. So I think that's really important, and it's part of our strategic plan. The second one is also brand new to the LSCP, which is this idea of creating vibrant communities. It's this more comprehensive economic development strategy. I don't think any of you, it's not a stranger to anyone sitting up at this table. And it's something that the LSCP, from my understanding, had kind of dabbled in over the years, but now we've made a very intentional effort to be very permanent and intentional about working to create these types of places that people want to be. Right? You guys all know my story. I spent 14 years trying to come back to Marquette. And it wasn't because I thought Marquette was boring, right? I obviously liked it here, right? And there was that vibrant idea of coming back and finding a job here, and I want everyone else to be able to live that path. So we really focus on that. And then additionally, we have that encouraging entrepreneurship, which a lot of our partners do. So we offer some transactional entrepreneurship work, but typically if you want the hands-on support, we have partners that'll do that, right? We have Accelerate UP, we have Innovate Marquette, we have Northern Initiatives, we have the SBA and SBAM, and all these other folks. So we let them do a lot of that work, but we really focus on coordinating and trying to play air traffic controller with that area. Advocating for shared interests has a lot to do with our advocacy work, as its name would imply. So I'll be in Lansing next week at Lame Duck, working on some of our priorities, which we'll talk about in a minute. And then connecting and informing members is really important. And it's that informing piece that I think has been missing for a number of years. And so when we do events at the LSCP, we have some that are just to get to know and form those relationships. But a lot of our events are now education focused, right? We're learning about key priority issues. So you're meeting new people and you're leaving with new information in your head in ways that you can interact. And then we have 3 internal ones that are down there in the lower corner, just around stabilizing our finances, investing in ourselves as a team, and getting better at telling our story so it's not such a secret. So this is our business development impact from 2023. So I don't have the 24 numbers yet, obviously, but this gives you, it's that big number really in the upper left that kind of gives you this idea that the team of, again, about 12, really 8 if we're like our true core size, we touched base with almost 600 businesses last year. And we're on track to hit that number roughly again this year as well. That gives us an opportunity to understand what those resources, what they need, what are their barriers to growing and investing, but it also gives us an opportunity to build new services and to connect them to other partners. And just for us to understand as we do advocacy work, what's really happening on the ground going forward. And then we use everything we learn from these visits in everything we do at the LSCP, from what we build to where we go. Last year, also about this time, we announced that we had gotten $3.4 million from the state to build the Small Business Support Hub. And when I say we, I mean LSCP and everyone down there along the bottom of that slide. So we have agreed to be the person who actually signed the form. So the money came to us, but we're spending it with all of our partners. And the whole idea of the hub is to expand the availability of small business support services across Marquette County, but also 6 other counties in the central UP. We really believe in this idea that while we are Marquette County focused, Marquette County benefits when we work with all of our partners. And so building programs like the hub that expand our access to outside also brings those better partnerships and that goodwill into Marquette, as well as those additional resources and potentially business growth. So the hub has been up and running this year. Erica Huss has been hired as our program manager. There are a number of services that it offers, not a whole lot of which are new. The whole point of the hub is actually to better coordinate those services, because right now you could find essentially anything you need as a small business, but you have to dig really hard sometimes to find it. A number of you are small business owners, so you know. But the hub will help coordinate all of those and just make it easier for you to go through. We, of course, also do have direct grants available. We're doing 4 rounds of direct grants to small businesses. The first round should be announced here shortly. We awarded about $105,000 in direct grants across the 7 counties. And then you see a number of other things in there as well, including NMU's Main Street Academy, which has been a long time standing goal of the School of Business at NMU to actually team up teams of students with some local small businesses in a more coordinated way. It was kind of happening in a one-off way, but now we'll have a traditional formal method to go through and team up those teams of students with businesses. The other big release, of course, this year is a target market analysis. I know Sean's walked you through this to some degree already, so I won't bore you with all of these numbers, but you see them up here. I will say that this has single-handedly really changed the conversation around housing. And I really liked your comments earlier about the cooperative idea. Actually, I didn't realize there was a barrier to that. So we'll talk a little bit about maybe some ways we can address some of those kinds of things. But these are the numbers that we're now aiming for, right? And when people tell us that they don't know what the market can handle, we can tell them the market can handle 980 new units, 1,445 rehabilitated units every single year across the county and not break the market. That's what the demand is to live in Marquette County. Those numbers below are the numbers in the city of Marquette specifically, but our consultant gave us one important caveat when she talked about this, which is just because it's in those imaginary municipal boundaries doesn't mean the market stops at those boundaries, right? So you can meet some of the city's demand in Negaunee, in Ishpeming, in Chocolate, and Gwin, and vice versa, right? So we look at it in a county-wide level as well. This gives you that idea of that mismatch. Again, I know you've already seen it, but this idea that we are oversupplied on large houses and cottages with private yards, way undersupplied on things like townhomes, smaller houses, condos, apartments, things like that. And then these give you the idea of the rent tolerance and the price tolerance as well. Of course, we all know right where those bars are the biggest is where it's basically mathematically impossible to build housing right now. And so we have to work with partners across the board to be able to make that happen, which is where Housing Now comes into. So Housing Now is a new private-public partnership that was started in October that is modeled off of 3 other similar efforts downstate that have been very successful in changing the conversation and better coordinating tools around housing. So it has 25 organizations ranging from our largest employers to local governments to nonprofits to contractors, developers, tradespersons, and everyone in between who get together right now only once a quarter because I don't want to bog them down with a bunch of in-person meetings, but we have a lot of communication in between those meetings. So if we need to fund something to move housing, there's an opportunity. We now have a group of folks we can go to say, hey, we need this to be able to act on this right now so that we can go ahead and actually stay ahead of the curve. So what's really exciting, I hope will come out of this, is some much better data as well. There's been a ton of statistical analysis done in some of the others, again, that have changed the conversation around housing. So this is just getting off of the ground right now, and it lives within the LSCP Foundation itself, which allows us to collect 501c3 tax-deductible investments in its work as well. So we're pumped for that, and these give you its focus areas, just in case you were kind of curious. This will feel really similar to the housing strategy that the LSCP already has publicly out there that we are in the process of updating right now to align with Housing Now. And we will actually be giving up our branded housing strategy to put it underneath the Housing Now brand. So Childcare Spark was another really big success this year. So we have had 7 folks go through Childcare Spark, which I will admit is not as many as we had hoped when we launched it, but I will say all 7 of them have opened businesses. So one of them, unfortunately, opened it up downstate. They had something change in their family situation. They had to go downstate. We were able to recoup some of those funds, but ultimately it was still successful in our mind, right? There are now more childcare slots all across our county. They've been out in Gwin, they've been in the West End, they've been in the city of Marquette. So one of the biggest reasons that we worked on Childcare Spark as an in-home childcare business incubator was because we could place them geographically all over the county, and we could use an asset that people already have, their home. Right? So we didn't have to find new land and build new buildings, and we didn't have to deal with the more stringent regulations of childcare centers versus in-home childcare businesses. So Spark in April also won the National American Planning Association Economic Development Best Practices and Innovation Award, which is a mouthful. But we got to go to Minneapolis and accept that. So we've been talking to places like New York City and folks on the West Coast, explaining this program that we built right here in Marquette County, working with all of those partners to make it happen. So we're really excited. I think 2025 will be the year that program goes national, or not national, sorry, regional. I'm ambitious, I'm not that ambitious. And the last big issue I want to talk about is, of course, air service. Tonight on your agenda, you have a resolution to support Marquette Sawyer Airport. I certainly hope that we'll be able to pass that. But we're really excited that after losing the Minneapolis flight in 2022, we were able to reclaim the Minneapolis flight starting in January of next year. I'm going to be honest, our flights are never going to be as cheap as Escanaba in some cases because we don't get federal subsidies for our airport, and that's just not going to change. So, but we actually have been talking lately with potential changes at the federal level. You know, almost every federal program is now suddenly on shaky ground, right? So it might benefit us to not be reliant on a federal program. So working to make sure that our airport has accurate service, and this gives you a timeline of what it took, right, really, to get that Minneapolis flight back. So it's not like we just went and asked nicely. Like, we built a demand and leakage study, and we had a true visitor estimation, and we did a business survey, and then we shared all that stuff very publicly, and it's still available right now at marquette.org/airservice if you want to see it. Then we met with Delta, and then we flew out to Utah and met with SkyWest, right? Like, we did all of that heavy lifting to make sure we get the flight back. So now it's really important as we go forward that we're using this route and we're using this service, because right now it is backed via our own version of a minimum revenue guarantee, which the county secured by working with the Michigan Department of Transportation and some aeronautical dollars that they had. That'll expire in the summer. And so we need to make sure that this route, they see a future for this route that is profitable by the end of summer. I will tell you that SkyWest was very optimistic. Once we had built a business case, it was not a hard sell to them. But we had to build a business case, and we had to go to them directly because there's still a shortage of pilots and there's still a shortage of airplanes. But years and years of relationship building with SkyWest, pre-pandemic, LSCP and the county and the airport had gone out to meet with SkyWest every year. And that relationship that was built over those 10 years paid off for us this year. And so making sure that we're kind of keeping that long-term perspective in mind is key. So you're going to see a lot more marketing going on, some more data collection, and we're not done, right? There is strategic planning that's happening at the airport in conjunction with InvestUP, and we're also looking at other airlines and other potential route and service options, so we don't just stop at Minneapolis. I think our next goal is a second Detroit flight back, right? And that I think would be very helpful, and that we do have a soft commitment from Delta that they're interested in that. They just don't know the timing of when. So they are a little further behind than I think other airlines, and they told us that Detroit and Minneapolis are actually the two hubs nationally that have still not recovered up to pandemic service levels. So of course the two we go to, right? And so we're working on them though, and they've been great to work with. And then advocacy-wise, just to give you an idea what we looked at in 2024, we really worked actively with the governor's office and other partners on supporting emergency funds to address the lack of snow last year. I really hope today was just the beginning of a very snowy winter. So, because I have snowshoes I have not opened yet, and so I really need to use those, but our businesses need it, right? Our tourism needs it, and quite frankly, we just need it, I think, as Upers, right? We need the snow and to understand and appreciate that. We also, of course, really heavily looked at the FLSA salary threshold, which is now a moot point based on a circuit court ruling the other week. So they vacated the rule. So we are back to about $35,000 as part of the salary test. So sick leave and minimum wage Supreme Court ruling suddenly threw everyone's sick leave policies into disarray, as well as address the minimum wage. And so those are set to go into effect on February 21st, unless changes are made at the legislature, which we know there are two bills that are currently vehicles for lame duck, that we do expect some type of change to come out of that during the session yet this month or next month, but we'll see. The state budget's always a big focus for us. And then this year, economic development has been huge. There's been a lot of push at the state level around policy to redirect what have traditionally been large-scale investments in corporate projects to better balance those with a more comprehensive, here's a pot of money to create jobs and traditional incentives, and here's an even bigger pot of money for infrastructure and community development and housing and all the things you're going to need to actually support these job creations. It's a messy formula, so that's kind of the holdup. We're trying to figure out what's going on there, but we expect that to move in December in some way or another. And then dark stores, there are now 3 competing dark stores bills in the legislature, so trying to figure out which one of those might move. Tons of housing work this year, tons of really great tools, and one particular bill, Senate Bill 293, that got stuck in some misconfusion last year, and so we're hoping that'll shake loose in lame duck. That would allow to use funds from the Community and Housing Development Fund. I'm probably getting that name wrong, but right now it's locked at 80% for housing projects, and we could use up to 120% AMI housing projects, which we now know is still not enough, but it really at least opens up some of that going forward. And then of course, short-term rentals, which honestly, we just looked at Karen too, and like, what's going on with short-term rentals? And she keeps us more in the loop than we can even follow it sometimes. So we appreciate that. And then just a handful of other highlights and fun pictures for you. Emerging developers events. We opened our second location in the West End in the former Chamber building out in Ishpeming. So as the Chamber chose to dissolve earlier this year, we walked into that space and now have the West End Economic Hub. My husband and I officially became Marquette homeowners. So when you get our tax bill, you're welcome. So our house has been in the family before us for 30 plus years. So that uncapping is going to hurt. But we're really excited about that. Match on Main, we worked with the city to apply for Match on Main in Ishpeming, and they got their first ever attempt at Match on Main. They were successful. So we're really excited about that. The Rural Prosperity Summit. I don't even know what that one is. Oh, I think that's Econ Club. And then Zosha and I in the lower right presenting on Childcare Spark. We launched Breakfast in Business this year, which is in one of those new series around connecting and informing people again. So we've had 4 of those this year. We're going to have 6 next year because they've been so successful. We launched the Strategic Trails Plan, which is a project funded through Eagle Mine that brought all of our major trail systems together to think about a future and collectively what it looks like to go after resources together, right, and to connect the trail systems. Aaron and I got to walk with the Lieutenant Governor on the Mackinac Bridge walk on September. I just put that in there because it was fun. I was honored to serve on the Master Plan Steering Committee, so we really appreciate the city, including the LSCP, and those efforts. You know, planning and zoning and all of that stuff is so vital to have creating those vibrant places that allow you to have strong economic developments. On the upper right is a small business celebration. The lower left, again, we were in Lansing doing more meetings in the Northern Michigan Policy Conference, and then MEDC hosted an emerging developers event here in Marquette County. And then last slide, we worked with the city of Negaunee on their just recently adopted economic development strategy, so called Forge Your Adventure, which is a really exciting project for us. There's us in Sky West, me and Dwayne. We gave comments on the UP Energy Study, which is still a bit of an unknown at this point. We participated in the Sister City delegation this year, so we really appreciated those. We offered for the first time ever citizen planner scholarships, again, going back to our housing work and working with local officials to make sure you have the resources, right, to make the decisions that you need to make and to work on policy. And then we had our first chief morale officer, Woody. So he was a rescue from UPAWS that we adopted around Christmas last year and has his own bed in our office and everything else. So he's kind of sassy, but he's cute. So, and that is the squirrel version of everything we're doing. That's not even everything. That's just everything since last year. So happy to take questions.
All right, commissioners, do we have any questions? Commissioner Ottaway?
Chris, I'll keep it short. It is so refreshing to sit here and see somebody that is as passionate about what they do as you are, and to know that you're contributing to our community the way that you do. I think we're very thankful, at least I am, to have somebody like you in your position. And really the work that you've done over the past year is commendable, and it's amazing to see. I really don't have any questions other than if there's anything that Marquette can do that we're not doing, please let us know. But I know that you already do that. So thanks for all you do, and your team too, because your team's phenomenal. Thanks.
Good. Thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. I get excited to hear about your updates, and that's not something that I was doing several years ago from whatever entity was giving you the presentation. I think that one of the things that I just want to recognize the most is how the LSCP has been unifying the county and the UP counties further out. But it's nice to have this. We're not just Marquette, we're not just Negaunee, we're not just over here, over there. It's really done a nice job of unifying our communities, and that's something that has been kind of hard to do in years past. So keep up.
You're telling me.
Yeah. So and it's easy to see that you can see the difference in the conversations that the people have, whether they're commissioners or whatever aspect to that they're business people, whatever. It's really taken and lowered the guard on a lot of people and opened up the door for those conversations. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate that.
Commissioner Davis?
I can't not say something. I am really happy that Marquette is back in Lake Superior Community Partnership, and I'm even more happy that you are at the helm of that whole organization, because what you have been doing over the last couple of years has been very impressive. I like that you're focusing on the vibrancy of Marquette and that that's why you came back here. The work that you have done with just bringing everyone together on the housing, I think we've seen more progress than we have. It's kind of like happening. Also the childcare, and I'm really excited about air service coming back, and I know how excited you were when you came back from Utah to meet with the airline. I think that the air service to Minneapolis will bring a lot of people back to Sawyer Airport, including me. And I have also signed that resolution. So I'm really happy that we are doing that resolution this evening, and I think you'll find full support for that. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I won't tell a lot of people this story, but actually when Dwayne and I were coming back from Utah, our flight in Chicago was moved 3 different times to 3 different gates. We had a different crew. We were like 2 hours late leaving, and everyone was complaining about air service in Marquette. And Dwayne and I are just sitting there, right? Like, can't say anything, right? Like, so, yeah, we're really thrilled. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Any other commissioners? No? Thank you so much for coming, Chris. You packed a lot into a pretty short amount of time, so I will give you credit for that. And it's nice to see how much you guys are actually doing. I'm very excited for the Spark childcare to really take off this year too. I think that is a much needed part of this community, and it's been really helpful to have you guys leading the way and kind of helping to encourage that. So it's very nice on that side. I'm happy to see that it's expanding even more, not nationally, but
No, not nationally, but yeah, we appreciate that. Right now, we don't actually currently have any participants in Spark, so if you're aware of folks who want to start in-home childcare businesses, please send them our way.
absolutely.
Yeah. So
All right.
thank you,
Well,
guys.
thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
All right. Our final presentation of the evening is from the Election Board by City Clerk Kyle Whitney.
I just thought you guys were praising Chris's speed. I just thought I'd try to get up here as quickly as I could. It was a little slow. Sorry. Commissioners, Mayor, thank you. This is the annual meeting where I stand up here and tell everybody they should join the City Election Board. So the City of Marquette has a election board. This is the membership that you have mostly appointed. The city clerk is the chair. We have 3 members, 1 vacant seat, and Deputy Clerk Rachel Quayle is the staff liaison. This is a role that is laid out in state law, but it is also detailed in the city charter. The election board shall appoint election inspectors for the election. They test the accuracy of the voting equipment, and they do pretty much everything else required under state law of them. So that mission, pretty clear, again, charter and state law. They meet. It's very limited. I mean, this is not really an advisory board. It's not a board you guys get a whole lot of recommendations or direction from. If there is an election coming, they will meet to appoint the election inspectors for that election. They will meet immediately before the election to conduct public accuracy tests of the equipment that's going to be used. Both of those things happen in public meetings that people can come to. I'm not going to say they're super exciting, but they are enlightening. I think it provides an interesting way for members of the public to see some of the end-to-end process. What happens in that meeting as far as testing and sealing the equipment, data is provided at that point that is verified actually on election day. So when workers are opening up the precincts on election day, they're verifying that the seals that were placed in this public meeting haven't been changed and the data hasn't changed from there. The elections board also certifies local candidates for election. So if you file, people in this room probably have done this, if you file for city commission, if you file for Board of Light and Power, those filings get officially certified by the election board. Essentially, they're just verifying that you've met the criteria required by the charter. The board is also charged with establishing precinct boundaries and AV counting boards, among a couple of other things. 2024, 7 meetings. We had 3 elections in 2024, so they appointed workers and tested equipment for all 3 of those elections, and they certified candidates in April for the City Commission and Board of Light and Power races. This is the part in the presentation where I've kind of finished talking about the election board, and then I just talk about elections because you've given me the microphone. So we had, I mentioned a number of elections. As everybody here is well aware, we've had a lot of changes in election law in the state of Michigan, in election processes in the state of Michigan in the last few years. A lot of them are spurred by Proposal 2 of 2022, which was a statewide ballot initiative that amended the Constitution to add a number of voting-related provisions. Early voting was one of those. And now across 4 elections in the city of Marquette, we have conducted 31 days of early voting. So in the last roughly just slightly more than a year, we've essentially had 35 election days, which is a big step up from typically just having 3 or 4. There's now a permanent absentee ballot list. So a couple of years ago, you did not have the ability as a registered voter to get an absentee ballot automatically sent to you for every election. You had to make a request each time. Now you can make that request and say that you don't want to deal with the application, you just want a ballot for every election. We've got over 4,350 residents on that list. It has also provided for the early tabulation of absentee ballots, which has allowed us to staff and run an absent voter counting board and process some of those ballots ahead of Election Day. Prior, we could only do that starting at 7 a.m. So in 2020, in the presidential election, we had over 7,000 ballots. COVID really helped boost those numbers. And we didn't get everything wrapped up, done until probably 3 a.m. This time we had just over 5,000 ballots, which is still a hefty number. And we were done, I think, with everything by 10:30 midnight. So that early tabulation, I think, has been a huge boon to us. Various other changes, which I think you guys know about. And just to stay on topic, the election board actually approved the new precinct boundaries that have been adopted in the city just about a year ago, and are in charge of approving absent voter counting boards and that setup. Just a little bit of data, the November 5th, 2024 presidential election, almost 11,000 votes cast in the city, which has almost certainly got to be the most votes we've ever had in the city, because we were happy to say that 2020 was the most we'd ever had, and this election had more voters than that. Almost 70% turnout, 5,100 absentee ballots. We did have 2,300 people vote during early voting, which again was a kind of a phenomenal number compared to previous turnouts. And in the 14 days leading up to the election, you can still register to vote in the state of Michigan up to and on Election Day. But if you're going to do it in the last 2 weeks, you have to actually come into the city clerk's office and do that. So in that 2-week period, we had 538 people in the city of Marquette registered to vote, which is, you can see, significantly more than we've had in previous years. And it turns out we're all done. County certified the election results. The state certified the statewide results on the 22nd of November. And the only other thing was over the last year and a half or so, the City Commission undertook a process, supported a charter review. It is a once every 10-year review called out in the existing charter, where we put together a staff group. The charter review group went through and pinpointed some possible charter amendments, and then City Commission kind of vetted those and approved us to put them on the ballot. And this is just going to be, we'll go from the most liked to the least liked. Changing publication requirements for adopted ordinances passed handily. So that is essentially, it's clarifying the process. When you guys adopt an ordinance, we will publish a summary of intent of that ordinance, just kind of a 1-sentence explanation of it. Full ordinances are available for review online and in our office and at the library. Just a clarification of some anti-nepotism language in the charter. People were totally fine with that. Removing date and time requirements for commission meetings. This is going to come up in just a second when we adopt your calendar. The charter used to say that the first meeting in November had to happen at 7 p.m. specifically on a specific day, the first Monday after the election. All the other meetings you could schedule whenever you want. So we removed that requirement. and eliminating the requirement for primary elections for local offices in the city of Marquette. So if the city commission is, people are going to file to run for city commission or board of light and power, there used to be a trigger to have a primary, which would happen in August. That trigger no longer exists. So if you file to run for city commission or board of light and power, you're filing to run in the November general election for that year. On the ground, what that means is that that filing deadline is actually going to shift later into the year, so people won't be having to file 7 months ahead of the election, which I think is nice. People like that. And then we proposed removing the limit on board and committee appointees, the amount of years they could serve. Charter says if they have been appointed to serve on a board or committee and they've been there for 6 years, they can't be appointed to another board. They can't be reappointed to that board. But we're going to leave that provision in because people voted very handily against that one. And again, just some of the impacts that you guys in the city will see from that election planning. I think scheduling and the costs of elections, costs have been rising. It's definitely going to help with that. The commission meeting schedule changes a bit, and then that filing deadline will shift from April into July. And that's all I had. If anybody has any questions.
Question or comments from the commission?
Oh yeah, and tell everybody to file to be on the elections board. We have about to be 2 vacancies.
All right. Anyone? Well, I think you gave a very great presentation about all of that, Kyle. Thank you very much. Great. All right, commissioners, that moves us to the consent agenda, which is a roll call vote. Do we have a motion on consent? Commissioner Ottaway?
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
A second. Commissioner Gottlieb?
Second.
All right. Any discussion? All right. As this is a roll call vote, City Clerk, could you please conduct the roll call?
Commissioner Davis,
Yes.
Commissioner Gottlieb,
Yes.
Commissioner Larson,
Yes.
Commissioner Ottaway,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Schlegel,
Yes.
and Mayor Hanley.
Yes. Motion passes 6-0. That brings us to new business. We have one new business item, which is the 2025 City Commission meeting schedule. City Clerk, could you please read the background?
Thank you, Mayor. Per the requirements of the Marquette City Charter, the City Commission shall provide by resolution for the time and place of its regular meetings and shall hold at least 2 regular meetings each month. The proposed 2025 City Commission regular meeting calendar is attached. As usual, meetings are proposed to be held at 6 p.m. on the second and last Monday of each month, with a few exceptions. Following the adoption earlier this month of amendments to the City Charter, all meetings can now be held at a time and date determined by the City Commission. Previously, the Charter required a meeting be held at 7 p.m. on the Monday following the general election. The only proposed shift from the calendars of previous years involves that first meeting in November, which is proposed to be held at 6 p.m. on the third Monday of the month. This shift will allow for the canvassing and certification of the general election prior to newly elected city commissioners being sworn in. Recommendation: adopt the 2025 City Commission meeting schedule. Alternatives as determined by the Commission.
Correct. Commissioners, do we have a motion? Commissioner Larson?
I move that we adopt the 2025 City Commission meeting schedule as presented.
All right, and a second. Pro Tem Schlegel?
Second the motion.
All right. Any discussion? All right. All in favor, please say yes.
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 All opposed? Motion passes 6-0. All right, that brings us to our second public comment session of the meeting. Reminder that public comments may not exceed 3 minutes per person, and please clearly state your name and physical address if you have not done so already. Do I have anyone for public comment? All right. Seeing none, public comment is now closed, and that brings us to comments from the commission. Why don't we start on the end here with Commissioner Davis?
Just real briefly, I will just mention that I'm really pleased that we have the 2 resolutions in our consent agenda. I already mentioned the air traffic over to Minneapolis, and I'm looking forward to more when we get that extra flight to Detroit. The other one has to do with statutory funding for cities and municipalities, and this is something that has been issue for years, and it's really nice that the House has passed a couple of these bills, and this is really encouraging the governor to sign those bills, and I'm really looking forward to having that trust fund developed. And other than that, happy Thanksgiving.
Just briefly, I was disappointed personally to see the term limit, the measure that would have abandoned term limits for appointed positions fail. I think what that does imply is that the citizens of Marquette need to stand up and join committees and be appointed. We just can't have term limits and then not have anybody stand up to take the spots.
Perfect. Commissioner Larson?
The only thing that I think is to, thank our presenters today. I know I didn't say anything to Chris, but I mean, we'll probably need, you to come in twice a year to get all of the goods, together, to have a little longer discussion. Talk slower. We can get a little bit more into the meat and potatoes of, each of the items there. So, but certainly appreciate you coming and sharing that with us today. Thanks.
Perfect. Pro Tem Schlegel?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Happy Thanksgiving. It's really the crux. I hope that everybody has a chance to sit back and reflect on what Thanksgiving means to them, get together with family and enjoy the holiday whichever way you decide, but safe travels to everybody that's heading out. There was long ago in the early 2000s, one of the first things I served on was the Prescott Advisory Committee. And I met a gentleman named David Boyd. He was our chairperson there, and David had recently passed. He was very involved in many different advisory roles in sale, in numerous just capacities throughout his life as a Marquette resident, and was a real champion, whether he knew it or not, how I felt about his passion and where that kind of pointed me in those early years of getting involved. I highly doubt that he maybe even remembers my name or would have remembered my name. But the point is that we lost a real great asset in David, and I just want to know that everybody out there, that how important it is to look at these leaders in our communities and learn from them, and use that as fuel for your future and whatever you decide to do. So that's what I have. Thank you.
Commissioner Ottaway?
Yeah. I know Pam and Michael have left, but Mo's still here. I just want to say, how awesome of a community the senior center is, and how cool is it that something like that happened and we had people there that physically had the tools to save a life. Just phenomenal. That senior center is a gem of this city, and I know you're so proud of that, and I think you really should be. So props to you for the environment that you've helped create there. Pam said something that was just awesome. Be kind to each other. I think that's something we could all kind of live by and take. And I try to really think about that all the time, and I think it's as we move forward and we get into winter, think about your neighbors. I know Commissioner Smith used to say that all the time. Weather is going to get different here very soon, and it's good to know that your neighbors are safe and good. So be kind to each other, as Pam said. Before I say my last thing, I will say that I would really love the city manager to speak on Alex's comment on cooperative housing, if she could, if she's so willing. But lastly, I just want to say happy birthday to Commissioner Davis, who's lovely down there at the end. She's 38 years old today.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much. I didn't have much to say today, except for I did want you to address that. And also, if you could address if there is a lithium battery recycling center in Marquette for Margaret. I know she had to leave as well. I did, again, want to comment, Mo. I can't imagine how scary it was for you the other day, but I am very excited to see how it goes. And I'm really happy that the city had put in a defibrillator that soon. I mean, they are extremely handy, and I would suggest them anywhere. We have one at the museum. For that very reason, you never know when you're going to need one, and it's nice that it was there and available for use, so that's amazing. But other than that, I will pass it on to our city manager.
Sure. I'll start with the battery question. So there are some directions that are on the Recycle 906 webpage that talks about battery information and specifically does talk about lithium batteries. And it's really important to follow those directions because I don't know if anybody recalls, it was this past year that there was a fire that was at the landfill caused by what they suspect is a battery. And so really trying to find that proper way of disposing those is really important. This also is a reminder that there is a way to recycle even the batteries that are within those e-cigarette containers. And we are fortunate enough that there's a local business, I think it's Kenny's Corners store, is hosting a place to drop off those e-cigarette batteries. So specifically, but for those bigger lithium ion batteries, there are specific directions on the recycle906.com webpage. And there's several different versions that I'm looking at of the type of battery. So I don't want to read all of those, but please go in there and take a peek at that and please follow that. And if you have any questions at all, please call whether it's the landfill or whether it is the Recycle 906 number, or even just call up to the city and we can guide you on where to dispose of those. So please follow those, and thank you to Margaret for identifying that and pulling that aside and allowing us to take that out of the garbage can. The other question regarding 410 East Ridge Street and the cooperative housing, actually the land development code was amended to allow for cooperative housing. And so we're a little bit confused at what that messaging might be, so we would love to talk after that. But I want to just say that cooperative housing actually falls under what is defined as intentional community, which has a little bit broader of a definition and is allowed in that area where 410 East Ridge is under multifamily residential, and that is allowed by, I believe, a special land use permit. So there is a process that we can certainly help walk through that if there is an interest to acquire and then rezone or allow for a special land use permit to make that a cooperative housing unit. So, and the number of people in that house is also defined in there as well. So we would love to have that conversation a little bit more. And I think that was something we recognized back in, I want to say even maybe 2019 that was even changed. So we're really, really proud of the efforts that we have made to allow for many types of different housing and hopefully take down some of those barriers. So we would really like to talk about some of that if there is something specific with that property alone. And again, we may have had a different conversation, or another staff member may have other information, but we would love to talk about that. And then lastly, I want to recognize Maureen McFadden and also Captain Aldrich here, who really played an important role in that incident that happened back on November 11th down in the senior center. They responded very quickly, and really Mo had a big part in this and containing the situation. When I spoke with her moments after it happened, she was incredibly confident and what seemed to be put together, but I know that she cares deeply about every person that walks through that door. And it's obvious with the amount of planning that you put into emergency response, whether it's this incident or another, but then also making sure that everybody's taken care of thereafter. And a big kudos and shout out to our HR department as well for following up and making sure that our employees and then also our community members are getting the support that they need after something that can be so it ended happily, but so much of a trauma that we hold, and making sure that we get that help. So mental health is incredibly important. But Mo, nice job on acting and responding quickly, but having that planning. And then Captain, thank you for being there and lending a hand on that too, and being able to guide the rest of the people that were there. So. And happy birthday, Commissioner Davis. That's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. With that, we are adjourned at 7:03 p.m.